more out of your love, sex, romance, everything. You're curiouser. So am I. In this live, I'm sharing my thoughts on life, love, passion, and creating something that is far better than I ever could have dreamed. Welcome to Curiouser. You want more out of your love, sex, romance, everything. You're curiouser. So am I. In this live, I'm sharing my thoughts on life, love, passion, and creating something that is far better than I ever could have dreamed. Welcome to Curiouser.
I had two today. Bonus. Hello, everyone. Hello, Sabyasachi. Always a pleasure. Good to see you. Welcome. For those of you who don't know me, hello, I'm Heather, also known as Nookie or Miss Nookie, if you prefer an honorific. I live an amazing personal life full of love, sex, passion, adventure, and exploration. And I want this for everyone, which is why I do these lives, why I write books, teach workshops, and offer coaching for better love, sex, romance, and kink for people of all genders, relationship statuses, orientations, and more. Hello, Celine. Glad you could make it. So, absolutes in conversation can kill it, and the hopes of understanding each other just dead. We're going to talk today about what an absolute is, what words and phrases can sound like absolutes when temperatures are running high, and how to avoid killing your relationship conversations. So most of us probably know the words, the obvious words that form an absolute, right? All, none, must, every, always, only, never. The challenge is many of us don't know how to avoid these words or how to avoid sounding like we're speaking in absolutes, even when we're not using those words or not meaning to sound like we're speaking in absolutes. So let's dive in and discuss. Real quick reminder, don't forget, please, to comment, say hello, let me know where you're signing in from, or ask questions in the chat. I love engaging. I do keep an eye on the scroll at all times, and your questions and experiences are what make these lives everything, right? So when I was doing some research about this topic, I ran across a website discussing absolutes in conversation. It had a table of suggestions on words to use instead of, right? So it said to try to avoid never and instead use uncommonly, rarely, infrequently, under a few conditions, or in rare circumstances. Now, from a standpoint of scientific or data-driven discussion, this makes sense, right? Because you don't want to say humans always have two eyes, because that's not true, right? Rarely they will have one eye or no eyes. Science, data. High twist. Twist says, yay, data. But data is clear and succinct, right? An interpersonal relationship, not so much. So instead of, you never bring me flowers anymore, try, you only bring me flowers in rare circumstances these days. Well, gotta admit that's more accurate. But is it better? Will it create the conversation you want to have? That's debatable. What about instead of, you always forget to take out the trash, you say, you consistently, with few exceptions, forget to take out the trash. Also, not likely to get you positive results, right? And we want positive results from our interpersonal communication. Real quick reminder, don't forget, please, to like this video and share it wherever you find me. It is a huge help for me to have people recommend me to their friends and family and groups and pages online. So thanks so much for that. So I guess let's talk about what absolutes are in our interpersonal relationships, in our interpersonal conversations. First, we'll define the word because y'all know how much I love defining words. So absolute, a value or principle which is regarded as universally valid or which may be viewed without relation to other things. Something that exists without being dependent on anything else, or ultimate reality. Now, definition 2 doesn't really apply, so we'll throw that out. We're going to look at 1 and 3. A value or principle which is regarded as universally valid and ultimate reality. And that's where we get into trouble. Because it's my philosophy in life and love that what works for you or for you and your partner may not be what works for another couple, throuple, individual, whatever. So I'm a big fan of do what works. Let me say that again. Say it with me. Do what works. This is one of my main mantras in life as well as in my relationships. And to tie this to what we're talking about today, obviously, what is true or works for you will not always be true or work for another. In fact, I would hazard to say that most of the time, what is true for you is not true for others. Earlier this week in a live, I said, suffice to say that my relationship not only fills me to overflowing on a daily basis, giving me deep contentment and strong resilience to the rest of life in general, but when there are inevitable rows and misunderstandings and difficulties, there's plenty of cushion. And that's true of all of my close relationships. Every single one, my partners, my friends, even my family, I would not have it any other way. Sabyasachi says, do what works. Yes. So I said that earlier this week, and that is true for me. Is it true for you? Maybe, maybe not. Is it even possible for you? I say, yes, it is. Maybe not probable with who you are now in life, but that can change. You might think it's not possible at all. We have different truths, which is why absolutes rarely work in conversations outside of a laboratory or science or data. But it's an easy trap to get caught up in. A lot of people, myself included, often prefer things to be clear cut, straightforward. We like having definitive answers to our questions and being able to make a clear choice between two options. Right? It's natural to want to feel like we are on the right side of things. Whether that's a matter of good versus evil, or simply what's smart and what's not so smart. The appeal of absolutes lies in the comfort of knowing we're making the best choice possible. We allow absolutes into our minds, and we love them because they enable us to be good and smart and right, at least up here. And that's really where it matters most to all of us. So a part of the definition of absolutes that bothers me is this: viewed without relation to other things. I mean, I wouldn't dare use an absolute and say there are no universal values or principles. But I can say with conviction that most behaviors are not best viewed in a vacuum. Like a few, got a hair that's bugging the heck out of me right now. Like a few relationship cliches. You can't love someone else until you love yourself. We marry our parents. You can be right or you can be happy. You have to compromise for a happy and healthy relationship. And so on. I can think of opposites for all of these common tropes, and definitely exceptions. Can you? KS, sometimes we think life is black and white, but we forget the gray in the middle. Absolutely. And interestingly enough, sometimes we think, if I could find this hair, I would be really happy. Sometimes we think that things are gray when it's actually black and white. Right? This is true, and the exact opposite is true. Okay. Did it? I feel like, pardon me, y'all. This is driving me more than a little insane here. Well, I don't know what to do. Thing is, I see things like this a lot, and people love them. It gives them the dopamine hit of feeling right and good without doing any work, actually thinking things through. And let me be clear. Every one of those statements have value. And they probably made plenty of sense in the circumstances in which they were originally framed. But to accept or spout them as absolute truths is a bad idea and will corrode your chances of really connecting with your partner and their point of view. And it will likely shove you up against each other's boundaries in pretty unpleasant ways. Roger says, everyone has things they absolutely won't allow. I absolutely will not tolerate cheating. I absolutely cannot stand disloyalty. There you go. right? Those are your boundaries. And perfect timing. Speaking of boundaries, did you know I'm writing a book about boundaries? I am. It's called Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck. That's the working title. And I am 50 some chapters in, and I'm actually in the process of condensing it and editing it right now to make a useful and succinct book. I am sharing those chapters as they are now with the people in my Take No Shit workshop, which you can find at takenoshit.curiouser.life. And on April 3rd, we are going to run a group session through. It's normally an online at your own pace workshop. You can do it that way as well. But we're also going to run a group session through the workshop. So if you're interested in joining up and being a part of that group, it is $47 right now. You can get it for a part of your Plus membership if you are a Plus member at Dating Kinky. That is getplus.datingkinky.com. And right now we are working on a boundaries journaling app. And Cyril told me that by next week, he expects to have the first prototype for me to test. And that will be available for our Take No Shit workshop members and our Plus members. So, yeah, super excited. If you're interested in this sort of thing, join now, because there is never going to be a better time really to, get in, get those boundaries set, and work with an amazing group of people. So back to absolutes. Let's look at an example of how absolutes in relationships can harm and slam up against boundaries. Okay. I've got one from my own life that I can share with you. Never go to bed angry. I bet you've heard that one before, right? But how is it harmful? Let me count the ways. Well, what if you've got a big mad, right? That can't be worked out by bedtime? Do you just stay awake forever? Because for me, hello, I'm an early bird. This seems like a great way to reduce the effectiveness and compassion of your communication, right? The mere piece of advice itself implies that all relationship issues should be able to be worked out within a set period of time. 24 hours, maybe? And that every argument must be handled now, or now-ish, to get it over with. No holding back to find the right words or because you're not quite ready. And if you're like me, perhaps you're really good at words and your partner may not be so much, right? And then it's unfair to push them to help you resolve something when they need more time to think things through and express themselves. So they don't say really bad things impulsively because they're feeling backed into a corner. Hi, Cobalt. Good to see you. You've been missing for a couple of days. Or maybe your partner just doesn't want to talk about it right now. Are you going to force it so you don't go to bed angry, or think they are bad for not wanting to address the issue right away and get it over with by bedtime? And some people use this phrase as a way to sort of force or guilt others into forgiving and forgetting more quickly. Well, I know I cheated on you for 7 years with 184 others, but that was yesterday. Why do you keep holding this against me? Oh, getting over a flu. I hope you're feeling better, Cobalt. Hello, Andre. London, UK. Yay! Going to bed angry or sleeping on it. Yeah. And so again, this goes back to what I was saying before is what works for you may not work for another. And key point, what works for you in this situation may not work for you in another situation, right? There are times when it feels right to get something over and done with, and you're both in a groove and it's going productively. And there are times when, yeah, we're going to set that aside. We're not going to be able to finish that this evening. Now, the idea, I might say the idea of going to bed angry, ideally, you might be able to say to one another, we're not going to be able to finish this evening. I know we're both upset. Perhaps we can set this aside for a couple of days, write things out, exchange our thoughts, and come back to it when things are settled, because I really love you. And maybe we could go to bed and just cuddle and deal with this later. Key point though, if you do that, you have to actually deal with it later, because otherwise it becomes a relationship black hole. And maybe I'll do a live on relationship black holes at some point, but a relationship black hole is something that grows and grows and grows in resentment and anger and upset and frustration, and it ends up swallowing everything in your relationship, just one thing after another, because it's never actually plugged. There's a hole in the relationship, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a, anyway. Anyone know that song? I don't even know where I got that. Singing Songs with Children, volume 17 or something like that. Whatever. Anyway, the key point here is that it's not just absolute language, like never, always, every, whatever. Twist says, setting a time variable to allow emotions to subside has been a life lesson in my relationship communications. Good. KS, what do you think? Not using the right words can cause misinterpretation. Oh, of course. And, it's my thought that ideally you're going to have a good enough relationship where if misinterpretation comes along, you have the cushion to pause. Instead of getting really upset or really angry or really sad, you can say, hold on, did you really mean that? Because I'm understanding it this way. Cobalt, it might have been Sesame Street. Sure. I don't know. Probably. So again, though, going back to misinterpretation, it's not just absolute language, it's also absolute attitudes. I say, I feel this. Or, hey, I experienced this. And you say in reply, I didn't do that. There. That's an absolute. An absolute that relies on you wanting to feel good and smart and right. And it reduces your conversation to one right answer and everything else is wrong. Right? To which I could say, well, I'm telling you my experience or feelings, and my experience is not wrong. My feelings are not wrong. Well, they're not right because that's not me. Absolutes. Impasse. Dead. Deader than Cocaine Bear left like a half a dozen people or more in the movie. Dead. Been there, done that, got the trophy. I'd like to thank everyone who's ever taught me that I should defend myself on both sides. I've been the one saying, these are my feelings, and somebody saying, nope, didn't do it. That is your problem. And I've also had people saying, this is how I feel, this is my experience, and saying, nope, didn't do it. Your problem. I've been on both sides. I've been a jerk. I'm guessing you have also been a jerk. Cobalt says, I certainly feel better now. No day is complete without getting some nookie singing. Oof, I feel bad for your days. Roger, when I get angry, it all comes out at once. 10 minutes later, it's done. I have only once in my life held on to it for any length of time. Okay, so now that's interesting because, again, what works for you and what works for somebody else, very different. For some people, it is a very fast fuse, flares up, done. For other people, like me, it takes me a long time, a very, very long time to actually get and feel upset. And then when I do, it takes me a long time, usually, to come down off of that. Because I look for every reason not to get upset. Right? I ask every question I can imagine to not be upset. I give every chance I can to not be upset. But then when I'm upset, I know that I have done all of that. Twist says, I can see absolutes being a thing in boundary establishment. Yes and no. There are absolutes in the sense of, a hard limit. Never, ever, 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 ever. However, most boundaries are going to be flexible within very specific situations. Like, for example, lying, right? Most people say, I need somebody to be honest with me in a relationship. Okay. What if they have past trauma? And they didn't lie to you about something that was harmful, but they did lie because, they were scared, they were working from past trauma, whatever. Do you forgive them? Do you let them work through it with you? It'll depend, right? It will depend. Cobalt says, a quick way to get that kind of defensiveness is to present something as my feelings when it's assumed motive accusations. Oh, yeah, true. I.e., I feel like you're gaslighting me is about an intent, not an observation. Hey, that guy over there, good to see you. Yes, it depends, right? And that is one of the key to boundaries, is taking a look at each of your boundaries, understanding what the core of them is, and then setting them in such a way so that you can be flexible, but not permeable, right? You can choose to flex. And that's actually part of the workshop, is choosing when to flex, when it is healthy to be flexible versus just giving in and being like, guess my boundary was crossed. Sucks for me. Let's look at another example. I say, I feel like we haven't been spending enough quality time together lately. You say, oh, that's unfair. I've been busy, and it seems like you're not acknowledging that. So this is not an egregious example. And the it seems like is actually pretty well spoken. It's the that's unfair part that is an absolute. That's, you're labeling that. And it immediately can cause the tone of the conversation to shift to accusation and defense versus collaboration. How about trying that again? I say, hey, I feel like we haven't been spending enough time together lately. And you say, ugh, fuck. We've both been busy and overwhelmed, it seems. What can we do better? Let's brainstorm some ideas. No absolutes. No labeling. Collaboration. Cobalt says, my gut is telling me something is off and it feels dishonest is valid. I might even say, I'm feeling like there's something else there, or there's something that's not being said, or something. I wouldn't even necessarily label it as dishonest, because one of the challenges with dishonesty is that then you're accusing people of potentially lying. And they may not be lying. They may not be telling the whole truth. They may not know the whole truth, especially when it comes to their own feelings, right? How about, please don't call me that name. I don't like it. That's ridiculous. Boom. Absolute. Right, wrong, labeled, done. Cobalt says, what? Mock shock? You mean I can't get my participation ribbon if I don't show up? I do mean that. Roger says, gaslighting seems to be the new catchphrase. Yeah, a lot of people are using it. And for good reason. People tend to use gaslighting regularly. For example, something as simple as, please don't call me that name. I don't like it. That's ridiculous, right? That is very minor gaslighting, right? You are invalidating somebody's feelings and you're making them feel like they don't have a right to them. Very minor. I think the challenge is with these phrases like narcissism and gaslighting and all of these things is that the terms that we use to label them don't matter as much as how we make each other feel, right? Hi, Mike. Good to see you. Great point. Thank you. So another way that something can sound absolute during a discussion, even if you don't mean it that way, is by not acknowledging your partner in your reply. I say, so-and-so was really mean to me this evening. You say, so-and-so has always been nice to me. So, of course, you may have meant just that so-and-so has never, done anything mean to you. And you may even be racking your brain for examples just in case. But the way it sounds is, well, I've never seen or experienced so-and-so be mean, or because so-and-so is not mean to me, it doesn't matter. You see? And I'm not saying that your words are not acceptable. So-and-so has always been nice to me is a nice enough sentence on its own. However, when it's put into context, well, I've never seen or experienced so-and-so be mean, or just because so-and-so is not mean to me, doesn't matter, right? Once it's put into context, that is what matters, the conversation you are having. Chaos says, people use terms that sometimes don't fit the situation. And that's true as well. A lot of people don't even understand the term gaslighting or what it means or why it exists. and yet they still use it. Same thing with narcissism, right? Narcissism is an actually diagnosable behavior, and yet people call other people narcissists without diagnoses. Cobalt says, you just nailed that head. I keep hearing folks on FL wanting to get rid of all predators, yet never asking how we can avoid behaving in predatory ways. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I'm sure that you can dredge up dozens of examples from your own experiences, both that you've done and that you've had done to you. Because, well, it's so easy to speak in absolutes when we are absolutely sure about our own perspective, right? And when one person is right, any deviation from that by anyone else is wrong. Or at least that's what we're taught. In that mode, we are either in agreement and both right, or disagreeing and they are wrong. There's no collaboration. There's no we. There is only you and me facing each other down and trying to make the other see our correct perspective. Cobalt says, because my friends would never do anything like that. Yeah, of course. Mike Strong, as someone who has experienced both narcissistic abuse and gaslighting, to hear them used out of context is frustrating. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that I really like when I talk about boundaries, I talk about setting people into categories of not a fit for me or a fit for me. Because everything else is an absolute, it's a label, and it doesn't functionally help. So, I mean, sure, it's not like I'm not willing to every once in a while say, you know, that person is a see you next Tuesday. Of course, especially when I'm talking with my friends, ranting, bitching, complaining, whatever. But long term, in my mind, I know that however I feel about them right now, the fact of the matter is they're just not a good fit for me, right? And that's what I tell most people if I'm asked about them. So what do we do about absolutes in our conversations and in our relationships? Two things, closely related. First thing, make them right. Ask yourself, what would I have to think or believe to make them right? And the answers are fascinating. For example, I'd have to think that this word means X instead of Y. Or in order for them to be right, I'd have to believe that insert whatever here is a sin or morally or ethically wrong. I'd have to believe that a certain way of loading the dishwasher is the only way. To make them right, I'd have to believe that all insert whatever general population are assholes or dogs or gold diggers or whatever. And so on. Like making people right first is an interesting way to view the world and open up possibilities in communication. In my personal relationships, it's opened me up to not only communicating communicating people. Communicating better with the people close to me, but also in helping them see many multiple points of view that they may not have considered in their own dilemmas. And while it doesn't necessarily always help me find agreement or even mutual respect, it has grown my capacity to feel good about how I understand a situation, and more importantly, to accept people for who they are. And it's made my own tribe and friends feel closer to me, like I can see their points better and understand them more. Mike says, I like that. The idea that someone fits or does not fit, a healthy way to set boundaries. Thank you. Cobalt says, I've heard that called steel manning, the opposite of straw man. Ooh, that's interesting. Mike says, I love that. What would I have to believe to make them right? And Celine says, it does take some thought at times to make them right. Ooh, yes. Mike Strong, and how does that make us feel to pretend we believe this? Yeah. Yeah, so that's like, if you think of it in terms that all of us can probably really understand, is like method acting, right? If I really, really, truly, deep down inside of me believed this thing, how would I feel? Cobalt says, I can see why you'd think that, one of my top phrases. So, first, make them right. And next, get curiouser. When you want to know your partner's and friends' perspectives, rather than trying to force yours on them, it changes the game entirely. Like, why do they think radishes are so gross? Because they are. Ask them. When I was young, I loved avocados. Then I went through about 2 decades of disliking them to the point of near physical gagging when I put them in my mouth. The texture, the taste, the smell, ugh. I can still remember it. It reminded me of rotten chicken in the New Jersey dump on a summer day. Ugh. Then one day I was in a restaurant in Soho that made fresh guac at the table. And I tried a bit. After all, it had, little bits of avocado in like sushi and stuff, and I dealt with it. So I tried it. It was good. Not gross at all. And suddenly I love avocado again. Like, scoop it and eat it with a spoon. Love. Like, I don't even have to mix it with stuff. Was I wrong when I didn't like avocado? Nope. Am I wrong now? Nope. But people told me I was wrong. People who loved avocados. Often. Why? Because their need to be right was so strong, so overpowering, that they actually cared about whether I would eat the slimy, well, at least that's how I thought of it at the time, flesh of a fruit named after testicles. Yeah. You just haven't had it prepared right. I've said it. Have you said it? I bet you have. Right? That's us needing to be right. Do you really care if somebody else doesn't like grapes? Who cares? It doesn't make you wrong for liking them. You don't have to convince them that they are wrong for not liking them. So what makes this thing okay when that other is not? Ask them. Did they really mean to hurt your feelings? Ask them. Why don't you like radishes? Because radishes are freaking gross, y'all. Ask them. Cobalt says it might have been a reaction to an overripe avocado. Entirely possible. I know that there have been other things in my life where I've liked them and then I didn't like them and then I liked them again. Just depends. So do you have any questions about what we've covered today? Pop them into the chat if you're with me live, or into the comments if you're watching the replay. Roger says, why would anyone care? You like what you like. Well, because some people feel that if I don't like something that they do like, that somehow that makes them wrong. And they have to make me like it in order for them to be right. Twist says, I'm on par with food critiques. Cobalt says, my mind loves tea, its history and rituals, yet my tongue hates it. There you go. So when people say something that makes you feel some sort of way, ask them. Get curious. Why do they feel that way? But hot tip, be careful about questions. They can get to be too much, especially one question. Can you guess it? Why? Twist says, I feel the challenge for me is going to be understanding the concepts of absolutes in combination with being selfish. Two interesting ideas in combination. Oh, yeah. So that's the funny thing. I was thinking today, actually, I'm going to pop off track here for a second. I was thinking today about how I feel like I could talk every day about little persnickety, tiny little things like this and really dig down deep into the human condition. And I was thinking how exhausting that must be to people who they just want a better relationship. They don't want to have to think about it. They just want a better relationship. And I was thinking about how all of these things sort of come together and they create this melange, this, to go back to the cooking thing, this sofrito of concepts that all merge together. And each small one that you get becomes like pieces of a puzzle, and you don't even know what the puzzle is that you're putting together until suddenly you fit in the last piece and it all springs into life around you. Like, I never know exactly what is going to be the tiny little thing that is going to click the light on in that room that I've never seen before. So when you start pulling things together, like they're greater than the sum of their parts, right? So why? Well, let me tell you. Why can be an attack. Why do you talk to me like that? Why can't you clean up after yourself? Why won't you call me? Why can't you arrive on time? But why don't you like avocado? Because it's a putrid color of green. It's mushy and slimy. It reminds me of rotted things when I put it in my mouth. And because I'm an autonomous human with a right to have personal preferences, just like you, apparently, love looking at least 10 years older than you are by doing that comb over thing with your hair instead of just accepting that you're balding, Robert. Next question. Why triggers justification? Remember, we want to be good and smart and right. And when someone tells us that we're bad or wrong, it can be a blow to our self-image. We may feel shame or guilt and want to find a way to explain our behavior as something a good person would do. It's a natural response to want to know the reason behind someone's actions. However, when someone questions our goodness, our smartness, or our rightness, it's natural to attempt to prove ourselves as good and right again. And when we do that, that justification reinforces that thought or behavior. So let's look at an example. Your partner is getting all worked up, and so you ask, "Why are you yelling?" Well, because you ask, they then look for an answer in their head and they find it. And then when they explain to you why they are yelling, they are also hearing themselves justifying it, which makes them, in their head, right to yell. And the fudged up thing about all this is like you didn't actually want to know why your partner was yelling. And you definitely don't want them to explain to you or to themselves why they are yelling. So don't give them that opening. In the case of avocados or comb overs, you probably don't really care why. You may actually be curious about what they hate about country music, though. But instead of why, try using other questions. How did you first discover that you didn't like country music? Who is your least favorite country music artist? Aw, what country music song assaulted your ears in the bad way? Point to where in your body your irrational hate of country music lives. When will you come to your senses and just go line dancing with me? Anything but why. Oh, and one more thing. And I talk about this quite a bit in my dating and connecting discussions. Don't make everything or anything really into an interrogation, right? Conversations in your relationships are best done as a team working together to understand each other better and build something for both of you. If one of you is not participating, not sharing information, not asking questions, maybe it's not the right time or the right conversation. Cobalt says there's some dudes on TikTok that could talk or wiggle me into liking country music, at least while they wiggle. That's fair. That's fair. I actually don't necessarily have anything against country music. There's a lot of it I don't like, but I think that's pretty circumstantial. There's a lot of music that I don't like. So, yeah. I like what I like. I don't like what I don't like. So, thanks to all of you for joining me today. If you love this discussion, please, and thank you, like and share it with others who would enjoy it. And don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're finding me so you don't miss out on upcoming lives. And I don't put this into my thank you, and I should. If you've taken anything from this, please put it into practice. Test it out. Make a note to yourself. I am going to do this thing. And then do it. Make it a part of your life. And if it works for you, yay. If it doesn't work for you, throw it out and start on something new. Cobalt says, have a great weekend. Yes, please have a great weekend. I am looking forward to taking the rest of the afternoon off. It has been a long week for me. I am kind of exhausted, and I'm looking forward to spending a chill weekend. So thanks to all of you again for joining me, and I will hopefully see you next Monday. If you're subscribed, you're going to get the list of what we've got coming up. Oh, if you go to nookie.datingkinky.com, if you want to subscribe to a newsletter there that'll tell you each week what I've got coming up that week, by all means, that's Nookie, NOOKIE.datingkinky.com. But again, subscribe, like, love, all the things, and I will see you all soon.